Okay, so there's a quick couple examples up at the top. Let's look at example 1 together. So I'm looking for the GCF. Remember, that means the biggest number that divides out of all those pieces. So here on example 1, my GCF, the biggest number that divides out of 6, 10, and 14 would be 2. And the biggest number of x's I can take out of them with 4x's, 3x's, and 2x's is just 2x's, so x squared. So remember that I want to divide each of these pieces by that 2x squared now. Okay, so my 2x squared ends up out front of the parentheses. That's what I'm dividing out. And then I just write what's left inside. So I have 6 divided by 2 is 3. And 4x's take away 2x's would be 2x's. So 3x squared. Out of the second term, 10 divided by 2 is plus 5. X to the third divided by x squared would just be x. And then negative 14 divided by 2 is negative 7. And the x squareds cancel. So that is factored. Remember from last class when I see 4 terms. Okay, so when I see these 4 terms. So I have 2 terms and 2 terms like example 2. I group them together. So I group them 2 and 2. And then I do a GCF on each one of those groups. So out of the first group, my GCF is 2x. If I divide each of these by 2x, I'm left with x plus, and then 4x divided by 2x is 2. And then out of the last two, it looks like my GCF is 3, so plus 3. Divide a 3 out of both of those, and I'm left with x plus 2. Remember, when we're grouping, when we have 4 terms and we're grouping, my parentheses should always be the same. So once I see these parentheses being the same, x plus 2, I can take those out front. And then once I take those out, I'm left with 2x plus 3 for my second set of parentheses. So 2x plus 3 would be my second set of parentheses. Okay? So it's a quick review on factoring by grouping because the last half of what we're learning today is actually factoring by grouping. So we're only learning one tiny little part, and let's look at that. So on example 3, this is called the AC method. Okay, it's called the AC method, and the reason it's called the AC method is if we look at the standard form of what we're going to be looking at. So we've looked at 4 terms, what to do with 4 terms. Now we're looking at 1, 2, 3 terms. When we have 3 terms, we're always going to look for A and C first. So here it says step 1, try to factor out a GCF. Is there anything that divides out of 2, 9, and 10? There's not. So I can't divide out a GCF, so I'm just going to go to step 2. So I want to list the factors of A times C. So I want AC, A being 2x squared, and C being 10. So if I multiply 2x squared times 10, I get 20x squared. Okay, so I'm looking for the factors of 20x squared, meaning 2 things I can multiply together to get 20x squared. So in order to get 20, I could do 1 times 20. So 1, and in order to get the x squared, I got to do x times x. So 1x and 10x. Or sorry, 1 and 20x. Okay, because 1x times 20x is 20x squared. The other way to get a positive answer is a negative times a negative. So I could do negative 1x and negative 20x. So I'm just finding numbers that multiply together to give me 20. So I could also do 2 and 10. So 2x and 10x. And then the negatives as well. So negative 2x and negative 10x. Because a negative times a negative, remember, is a positive. The only other way I can multiply 2 numbers and get 20 is 4 and 5. So I have 4x and 5x, and then negative 4x and negative 5x. Okay, so those are the factors of AC. Now it's called the AC method because I want to break this middle term apart and make it 4 terms so that I can group like I did in example 2 up above. So in order to break this term apart, I need to find the factors that add to it. So 1 plus 20 would be 21. That doesn't work. Negative 1 plus negative 20 would be negative 21. That doesn't work. 2 and 10 would be 12. That doesn't work. Negative 2, negative 10 makes negative 12. That doesn't work. So 4 and 5, 4x plus 5x makes 9x. So I've eliminated all these. I know that 4x plus 5x is 9x. So now I'm just going to break that b term, that middle term, apart. Okay, so 2x squared comes down, and 10 comes down. The only thing I'm doing here is just breaking 9x into the two terms I just found. So positive 4x and positive 5x. Okay, so that's the only thing that's new. That's the only thing that's new. I multiply a times c. Okay, that's what I did here. Find my factors, and then find the pair of factors that would also add to the middle term. Once you find that pair, you just break the middle term apart. So the first one comes down, the last one comes down, and the middle term breaks apart. That's the only thing that's new. We're just breaking the middle term apart. Now, at this point, we can factor by grouping. Okay, so I have 4 terms here. Now I can group just like we've done in the past. So none of the rest of this is new. All right, once I break it into 4 terms, then I'm factoring. So by grouping. So the GCF out of the first two would be 2x. And if I divide 2x out of both of those, I'm left with x plus 2. And then if I take a GCF out of the last two, I can bring out a 5. So divide a 5 out of both of those, and I'm left with x plus 2. So I'm just grouping right now, the stuff that we've done before. Now that I see my parentheses are the same, I can bring those out front. And then I'm left with 2x plus 5. Okay, so that's example 1. Let's go ahead and look at one more where we actually do have a GCF in the beginning. Okay, all right, so I want to check for a GCF, and I see that out of 12, 14, and 6, I can divide out of 2. So I'm going to take a 2 out, and this is just a very beginning step. So I'd be left with 6x squared plus 7x minus 3, right? If I do divided by 2, divided by 2, divided by 2, I take those out. Now I want to do the AC method inside my parentheses. Okay, so here is A, 6x squared. Here is C, negative 3. So I'm just kind of ignoring this 2 that's outside. So 6x squared times negative 3 is negative 18x squared. So AC is negative 18x squared. So now remember, my goal here is to break this into 4 terms so that I can factor by grouping. So I need to break this middle term apart. So I'm looking for the numbers that multiply to this that would add to this. So negative 18, I could do, so in order to get a negative answer, excuse me, in order to get a negative answer, I have to have one negative and one positive. So I could do, let's see, negative 1x and positive 18x, because a negative times a positive gives me a negative. On the flip side, I could do positive 1x and negative 18x, because that would also give me negative 18. So I'm just going to stop here and check, do either of those add to 7? And they don't. This one adds to negative 17, this one adds to positive 17, this one adds to negative 17. So let's keep going. So what else could I do? 2 and 9. So negative 2 and positive 9, or positive 2 and negative 9. So again, stop and check. Do either of those add to 7? And we see negative 2x plus 9x does equal 7x. So right here is my pair. Okay? So immediately I'm going to come up here and break 7x apart. So 7x, I'm going to make it into negative 2x plus 9x. So I break that apart. And then these other pieces just come down. I can bring my 6x squared down. I can bring my minus 3 down. And now I see that I have 4 terms. And we should know by now, hopefully, that when I see 4 terms, I group. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. So group the first 2 together. Looks like I can take out a 2 and an x. So 6x squared divided by 2x would be 3x. Negative 2x divided by 2x is just minus 1. And then out of my last 2 terms that I grouped together, I can bring out, looks like a 3. So plus 3 divide a 3 out of both of these. 9x divided by 3 is 3x. Negative 3 divided by 3 is minus 1. So again, I see my parentheses are the same. So I bring out this 3x minus 1, and then I'm left with 2x plus 3. Okay, so that's that. So let's take it one at a time. So go ahead and pause the video. I want you to try these number 5. It's just like example 3, so if you need to go back up and look, that's fine. But let's do example 5. It's just like try these 3. Then you can go ahead and play the video when you're ready for an answer. Okay, so I checked for a GCF, and there's nothing that will divide into 4, 11, and 6. So there's no GCF, so I just start with the AC method. So I multiply A times C, so 4 times 6 is 24. So AC over here is 24x squared. So then I want the numbers that multiply to this that would add to the middle term so that I can break the middle term apart. All right, so here we go. So it looks like for 24, since it's positive, they're either both going to be positive or both negative. So I have 1x and 24x, negative 1x, and negative 24x. Neither one of those adds to negative 11, so let's keep going. 2 and 12 is my next pair. So 2x and 12x, negative 2x, and negative 12x. And again, neither one of those adds to negative 11, so keep going. The next numbers I can think of that multiply to 24 are 3 and 8. So I have 3x and 8x, negative 3x, and negative 8x. And I look, and lo and behold, there it is. Negative 3x and negative 8x adds to negative 11x. So I break this apart. So negative 11x is going to be negative 3x minus 8x. Bring down my 4x squared out front. Bring down my plus 6 at the end. And now I see I have 1, 2, 3, 4 terms. When I see 4 terms, I know I should group. So group the first 2 together. There's no number I can take out here, but I can take an x out. So if I divide both of these by an x, I'm left with 4x minus, oops, I messed up there, didn't I? Put 4 for some reason. Minus 3. And then out of the last 2, in order to get my parentheses to match, if I want to get a 4x out of negative 8x, looks like I'm going to have to take the negative out. So I'm going to divide by a negative 2. So my GCF here is going to be negative 2. I know that sign's tricky there, so be careful. So I bring out a negative 2. So negative 8 divided by negative 2 is now a positive 4x. And 6 divided by negative 2 is minus 3. Double check and make sure your parentheses match, and ours do. So my 4x minus 3 can come out. And once I take it out, I'm left with x minus 2. Okay. So now go ahead and pause the video for example 6. Okay, example 6 does have a GCF that you have to take out first, so be aware of that. So take the GCF out first, and then continue factoring using the AC method. And then when you're ready for the answer, go ahead and play the video. Okay, so it looks like my GCF here, I can divide out a 2. So if I take a 2 out of each of these pieces, I'm left with, don't forget to write the 2 out in front of the parentheses, I'm left with 2x squared plus 9x plus 7. So now I'm ready to do the AC method. So my AC here is 2x squared times 7. That would be 14x squared. And then I'm looking for numbers that multiply to this 14 that would add to 9 in the middle. Okay? So I have 1x and 14x. Don't forget about the negatives. Negative 1x and negative 14x. Neither one of those add to 9, so keep going. I have 2 and 7. So 2x and 7x, negative 2x, and negative 7x. And it looks like right there we have it. Positive 2x and positive 7x make 9x. So I break my middle term apart into positive 2x and positive 7x. I bring this 2x squared down. I bring this plus 7 down. Now I have 4 terms. I'm ready to group. So as soon as you see 4 terms, you know you're ready to group. That's something you should be familiar with. So I look at these first 2 terms. It looks like I can bring out a 2 and an x, so I divide each of those by 2x. So 2x squared divided by 2x is x. 2x divided by 2x is plus 1. Looks like out of my last two terms, I can bring out a 7, so plus 7. Divide each of those by 7. 7x divided by 7 is just x. 7 divided by 7 is plus 1. Make sure your parentheses are the same, and they are. So I bring my x plus 1 out. And once I take it out, I'm left with 2x plus 7. One little thing, make sure your GCF makes it down to the final answer. Okay? So that GCF that you took out in the very beginning needs to be part of that final answer. So my final answer there is 2 times x plus 1 times 2x plus 7. Okay? So those are the notes. We will be practicing this a lot more in class next time. I just kind of wanted to get you guys some notes in to gain a little bit of knowledge before next class. Okay? So I will see you next class.